Hello, welcome to the Museum. I'd like to thank Louis and the rest of the team and all of you for being here. I'm just making quick introductions, so by order of speakers, and I'm so glad to be here because I wrote to Janet earlier that both of these speakers changed my life. So Vicky Do, who is an artist and curator at Sàn Art in Saigon, Vietnam, one of Southeast Asia's most important art spaces, really helped me think of this idea of trauma and, being Vietnamese American. We're really obsessed with it here, but she says, perhaps in her talk, she'll talk about some of the traumas that may exist in the homeland. And Janet changed my life because she was my professor when I was doing my PhD at USC. She's in religious studies and anthropology. And about 15, 20 years ago, I was her translator for Cao Đài temples, and I think it's a full circle moment when we were actually recently in Vietnam again, but so I'm really thrilled to have them both here. So that's an idea and an artist.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you see me? I'm a little bit short, so sometimes I would do this, but please bear with me. Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Vicky Do, and when Việt Lê informed me about the talk at the Vietnam Museum, I actually panicked because I asked him how should I frame the talk to match with the topic of spirituality and religion. And I look at Janet and I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about Cao Đài or Mother Goddess or anything, because my artworks have never really focused on any particular religion or belief. What kind of belief, what kind of greater truth do I try to connect to? I ask myself. At the same time, being here, seeing all of these amazing artworks from Vietnamese artists within and outside the country, I think it's going to be a good idea for me to just have a little share with you about my practice as a curator, as an artist first, and a curator, so that I hope that maybe it could resonate with any artists or cultural workers in my generation, who also looking to connect to understand a larger picture, to understand why we do what we do. So a little bit of a background. That was me. I was in Saigon with my grandmother. Very cute, I know. I think so. Everyone say that. So I was born in 1990, the year, and grew up in a decade that I would say, now looking back, I would think that it was the most hopeful decade of Vietnam, maybe of what? Okay. Why? A little bit of a very boring historical context. So Vietnam, after the war ended in 1975, the country came into a very closed society. Towards the end of the 1986 to be exact, Vietnam opened the door under Đổi Mới, which is economic reforms that aim to push the country towards market economy, but in a socialist-oriented, I quote, from the government. And also towards the end of the 80s and 90s, early 90s was also the end of the Cold War and rebuilding the world in a post-socialist way. In 1995 was also the normalization of the US-Vietnam relationship, which led to the return of a lot of Vietnamese American, or used to be Vietnamese refugee, boat people, whatever you call them, the Vietnamese diaspora, as well as the remittance, US dollars, from formations of foreign embassies and other foundations in Vietnam. So yes, the decade of 2000 was a pretty much cheerful decade from my experience, with also the rise of pop culture, commercial cinemas, with the returning of Vietnamese American directors and artists, and we have more funding, more contemporary art space, as well as independent literary and art movements outside of the state-owned institutions. The return of overseas Vietnamese such as Dinh Kieu Lê and Tống Anh Trung Nguyễn, Tiffany Chung, whose work you already see at the exhibition out here, also created more international connections as well as options for education for artists outside of the traditional art school. So I grew up in that era. I went to school. I left Vietnam when I was 17 years old, and I came back when I was 27. Now I work as a curator at Sàn Art. Before that, I worked as an independent artist, curated show here and there, and do some research, for money. So yeah, I grew up in that decade. I went to school, read books, went home. Once a year, I met up with my relatives who came back from the US. My parents, grandparents rarely talked about their past. Never had I questioned any propaganda about our nation history. We learned from school that throughout the history, Vietnam has endured and resisted many foreign invaders. And there was, a certain dichotomy, a very fixated understanding about the microhistory that we had to learn. I remember the very common thing that my parents used to say to me whenever I dared to question about, why things happen the way it is. And they always say that, this is politics, and you would understand when you grow older. So the second time, actually, so that was the very, very first times that I heard that phrase from my parents. The second time I heard this phrase, this is politics, it was actually from an immigration officer in Hong Kong. I went to Hong Kong for my master, and at that time I was trying to renew my student visa. And he was like, no, well, your visa is only 2 years and you have to finish your school and get out of here. And I asked him, why? The school say I can continue my study if I haven't finished, and I want to renew my visa so that I can study. And he say, don't ask. And I say, is it because Vietnamese passport holder? And he say, yeah, but don't ask because this is politics. So at that time, I understand why. It took me long enough to research and also reflect my own frustration of history through my artworks. So from now on, started as a research project in which I question the different usage of what the refugee means. For those who don't know, in the late 1980s, in order to resolve the crisis of refugees or exodus of people, the UN rolled out a comprehensive plan of action, which it screened people and classified them into either you are a political refugee or you're an economic illegal immigrant. So because of that, you have refugee and non-refugee. And so for that project, I was trying to meet with a lot of people, including Chinese Vietnamese who left the country before the war ended, Chinese Vietnamese who left the country because of Vietnam-China border war in 1979. Also people from southern Vietnam, Republic of Vietnam, who, on the losing side of the war, as well as northern Vietnamese who left the country in the 80s. And a lot of them were stuck in Hong Kong. So for that, I conducted a series of documentary of reenactment performance. I was trying to understand because I was trying to research on them, but I couldn't find a lot of information. There was some Chinese language information that was pretty much focused on the policy of Hong Kong and of the UN at that time, but not very much towards the Vietnamese diaspora in Hong Kong and in Asia in general. Most of them are very Western-centric, which means they were focusing on the Vietnamese resettlement in the Western world, such as the US, Canada, or Western Europe. So here is the map that I drew from my research. So there were a lot of them. So after the classification, people who were non-refugee were put into detention camps, which is like the polite way to say prisons. And a lot of the public impression actually about Vietnamese refugee was very much riots because of the lack of information and the lack of care. So there was a lot of things going on. I didn't want to go, a lot of it. But anyway, so after Hong Kong, I gave up on the Hong Kong visa. I was just like, it's not worth it, and immigration is just too much. So I came back to Vietnam, and I started curate instead of doing artwork because I was. I feel like there was like a void within me after the project, after From Now On ended. So I came back, I was trying to curate for artists from my generation, and it was own independent, so we were looking for like borrow space to conduct research and conduct exhibitions. And I realized, young artists from the world right now is very much sharing similar concerns about, the post-capitalist world and our positions on it, such as, development, religion, belief, and even looking back into their own tradition and try to connect with their family and their past. And when I came to the US to do research, is very much, it resonated with me that it's very much the same. Young artists were also trying to pose questions, and a lot of them started to look back into personal connection. I started working at Sàn Art. So for those who don't know, Sàn Art was founded in 2007 in Saigon as an artist-led platform by a bunch of Vietnamese American artists, including Tuấn Anh Trung Nguyễn and Đinh Kiều Lê. So because at that time Vietnam didn't allow much artists from the outsider, which means you're not from the state-funded association of art, to have non-unlicensed exhibitions. So artists were like, if you don't allow us, then we might as well just do our own exhibition. That's why Sàn Art was formed. So I started working at Sàn Art, and we do a lot of things. We do exhibitions. So these are the couple of the exhibitions I curated at Sàn Art. There will be artists that were interested in looking back the history of their homeland. Some artists, and all of them are Vietnamese artists, not Vietnamese American. And a lot of them were posing different political ideologies, as well as also trying to revisit the aftermath of conflicts. So I call it curating conflicts because, there were also artists that work with performance and video arts that pose questions to the contemporary Vietnamese society, where if you see the last one, the one with people holding the trees, that was the last show that I curated before I came here. So the artist was trying to, at first she was trying to protest on the whole, so the government was trying to chop down about 300 trees in the city center because they were trying to build a metro. as well as like a flyover, like an overbridge, a very big bridge, super expensive. And so the trees have been there for 300 years, more than 300 years, and the government used an excuse of development to chop down the trees. So the artists were trying to respond to that, and she did the performance as well as the exhibition for almost 5 years. So yeah, I've been as well. So at Sàn Art, we also try to do community outreach, which is try to bring art practice to the countryside or outside of the center. And we're trying to understand what it means by community engaged or socially engaged art, and what role of artists in today's society in Vietnam. Also talk. Oh, this is Vic. He was doing the talk at Sàn Art that I forced him to do because also Patricia. So for now I'm trying to bring back a lot of Vietnamese artists of the diaspora for more talks and exchange, because as working at Sàn Art as a curator, I noticed a lot of people are very hungry for learning about, what's going on in the other side of the world, in our counterpart. So that's what I've been doing. However, this is Andrew Lam, the writer, and I asked him to do the reading. He's a very charismatic reader. So the end of last year, my grandfather passed away. We never really talked that much. We weren't particularly close. He's old, but at the same time, he's very close up. We're trying to talk to him about his past, talk to him about, what he'd been through, but he just smiled and he just say, whatever. But at the end of his life, when he was falling into a coma, I think delirium, and he started to have hallucination of being back to his hometown. So his hometown is in Quảng Trị. For those who don't know, Quảng Trị is a province that has 17 parallel. So it's the province that has that were being divided by the war. And so he dreamed of being back there, and he was very panicking about, on the war, and he was very sensitive to sound because he thought it was, the war of bombing. And so he passed. I was devastated for a while. But anyway, so I decided to come back to my hometown, to my grandfather's hometown. And at first it was to grief, because I didn't know what to do. I tried to connect to him. But at the same time also try to connect to people like him that also passing away. And also, I also was trying to understand, so what if we think of a land as a body, how do we see traumas on that? Like what kind of trauma surface on a land? So I ended up asking several tour guides to give me a tour to different political landmarks in Quảng Trị, and I will show you a little bit of the film because we don't have enough time, so I'll show you a bit. Wait, how do I play it?
Năm 72 là nó là ranh giới giữa miền Bắc và miền Nam.
Cái cầu này đây hả?
Cầu này. Rất là cầu sắt này thôi. Bây giờ mình đã đến tỉnh Quảng Trị rồi, và huyện cuối cùng của Quảng Trị là huyện Hải Lăng mình. Kinh Hoàng đấy.
Mùa hè đỏ lửa đây.
Là mùa hè đỏ lửa đấy.
Offensive happened, the Vietnamese government acknowledged it, but they didn't acknowledge the highway of horror because they say that it didn't happen. So that's why I asked the guy. So the guy actually introduced it to me. So, yeah. Yeah, so we were just talking, and he say, yeah, we're on this highway, this is the highway of horror. And eventually I asked him, wait, I don't understand, so the government didn't acknowledge the Eastern Offensive, and he said, no, they acknowledged that, but they didn't acknowledge the highway.
Dài từ Quảng Trị đến câu 19.
Thị xã Quảng Trị.
Nhưng mà tâm điểm ấy là từ câu Bến Đá trước mặt mình này, từ Quảng Trị đến câu Bến Đá này.
I remember he say the main agriculture produce of Quảng Trị is sweet potatoes, and during that time people died just like sweet potatoes being harvested and put on the ground because at that time people couldn't distinguish between corpses and agricultural products, sweet potatoes. And Quảng Trị is and still a very poor, I think it's the poorest province in Vietnam. After that, he told me like whatever he say, please don't record it because he'll get into trouble. So I'm sorry. I'll play a little bit later. Oh, maybe this one is interesting. So yeah, I just did the visiting. I was just trying to understand the place itself. This is the parallel, the 17th parallel. And the tour guide was actually from the government, and she was she's very scripted, but she's really charismatic. I like her. So she was like, so this is the 17th. And actually they're not that, they rebuilt it for tourists. So, yeah, I can, maybe the end of it. Yeah, we went to different political landmarks, And we also went to religious landmark, but I didn't put in here because, well, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So the reason why I share this is because I think it's a good time for me as an artist to question how, like, you know, why Vietnamese artists from the diaspora come back to Vietnam and care a lot about where they come from. And at the same time, we never did. We never tried to do that because we had the privilege of being in Vietnam. But at the same time, you know, we were also robbed of a chance to understand the world as well. We didn't know actually, you know, there's no true or not true. It's just we didn't know. We didn't have a chance to talk or to heal properly. And being here with Viet and with everyone in Orange County gave me a chance to have this dialogue, and we never really had this dialogue in Vietnam. So that's why I think it's a good timing as well. Yeah, now I panic. I don't know what to say, but I think I'm done. Thank you. Maybe I introduce the next speaker is Dr. Janet Hoskins.
Okay, well, I am not an artist. I'm just an academic. I'm a professor at USC, and I was interested in doing research on Vietnamese religions that come to California, and particularly what I'm calling here Vietnamese spirits in exile. I'm going to talk about two religions that in general no one has ever heard of. One is called Mother Goddess worship, and the other worships the left eye of God and is called Cao Daism. So, very briefly, both of these are indigenous religions that in some way re-emerged in the 21st century. Cao Daism is a syncretistic modernist religion. It's Vietnam's largest religion after Buddhism and Catholicism. It has 4.4 million followers according to the government, maybe more, maybe perhaps up to 6 million. It's headquartered in southern Vietnam in a town called Tay Ninh, 65 miles northwest of Saigon. It was born in 1926 during the French colonial period as part of Vietnam's struggle for independence. And it has 1,338 temples in southern and central Vietnam. And as you will see, it basically focuses on creating a modern combination religion from the standpoint of Vietnam. Now, the way of the Mother Goddess is quite different. It's a ritual practice compatible with Buddhism. It originated in northern Vietnam. It has an imperial pantheon of warriors, ladies of the court, healers from ethnic minorities, and impish princes. And it has thousands of small temples, many of them in private homes, a northern tradition located in Phu Sai and Nam Dinh, a central tradition in Hue, and a southern tradition focused on the Lady of the South of Sam Mountain, which also had a temple on Sunset Boulevard in California. Okay, I'm going to start reading a description of a ritual in Orange County. In the detached garage behind a subterranean house in Orange County, groups of Vietnamese gather on weekends to serve the spirits of imperial generals, mandarins, mountain princesses, and playful children. Kneeling in front of a mirror, a spirit medium watches her own face transform into that of a fierce warrior, a coquettish dancer, or a spoiled prince addicted to opium. Once she knows which spirit has descended upon her, she signals with a hand gesture, usually something like that, 1, 2, or 3, up to 7. To her attendants, she dresses in the appropriate costume, and she rises to feel her body shaking and her hands and arms moving in unfamiliar ways. Raising a sword or a lance, twirling scarves to choke her neck or entice a lover, she watches as her hands and feet trace the characteristic gestures of a figure from Vietnamese history and legend. Over 2 to 4 hours, she will incarnate up to 24 different spirits, offer gifts and blessings to her audience, and dance with both dignity and abandon. The last spirit is always that of a baby prince, prone to tantrums and pratfalls, impishly bowing at the end of the ceremony as she collapses, both exhausted and energized, onto mats spread in front of the elaborate altar. So here you see the elaborate altar in a temple, literally in the garage of one of these homes. I'm going to talk a little bit about anthropological categories of shamanism and of spirit possession. Basically, both of these religions are spirit possession rituals. In the US, we're more used to talking about non-Western religions as parts of shamanism. Shamanism traditionally has ritual specialists who travel up to the upper world of spirits on a quest for healing, for guidance in times of trouble, or for some vision of the future. The spirit possession ritual, on the contrary, is the idea that you call spirits to come down. They sit on the shoulders of the mediums, they come into their bodies, and the spirits dance inside them and speak with their voices. The shaman acts on behalf of others, patients, usually as a special vocation. The spirit medium is seeking healing, often for him or her or their self. Many different people can be possessed, so it's a sort of open initiation process. For shamanism, we usually think of as a performance that is supposedly ritually effective. The goal of spirit possession may be to produce a text or a set of instructions for Cao Daism. It may also be to produce healing for the person or the individual. In the case of, it's advancing, wonderful. In the case of Dao Mao, this mother goddess thing. So this is a slide from Orange County, Huntington Beach, as a matter of fact, someone's home temple. And this was a cross-dressing medium. Here he's incarnating this child spirit. And the way he described it to me was, he said, Vietnam was dancing inside my body. He came, was a child immigrant to California, found it confusing, sort of lost his way for quite a long time. He had traveled to these temples with his grandmother back in Vietnam, and then he found them again here and was able to practice in this tradition. This is the woman who owned this particular temple. She's possessed here by what's called the Sixth Lady of the Highlands, and she's holding waxed candles that are on fire. The men are usually holding incense bundles, the women have these waxed candles, and you can see she's dressed in the colorful costumes of an ethnic, someone from the ethnic minorities in the highlands of Vietnam, and behind her you can see exhibits of fruits, elaborately arranged, which are part of the offerings to these particular kinds of spirits. Now, the other tradition, Cao Daism, is a tradition where people literally worship the left eye of God. Why the left eye? Well, basically, they say that the left eye is anatomically closer to our hearts. Our hearts are somewhat on the left-hand side of our bodies. And so the left eye represents an ethical perspective. They do believe that when we look at the world, we have to, in order to see in multiple dimensions, we need to use both eyes. But the right eye they associate with the right eye on the US dollar bill. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but it's the eye of providence. It was put on there by Freemasons, by people like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. And basically, Cao Dais, who were influenced by Freemasonry but doing something different, represent worship of the left eye as a worship of a more ethical, universal vision of the world. And this is a slide from their pantheon. This one is in Garden Grove, again, not terribly far from us, on Orangewood Avenue. Up at the top, you see Buddha in the orange robes. On either side of him, in the red, is Confucius. In the blue, we have Lao Tzu. And then we have Guan Ang, or Guan Yin, as she's called in Chinese, often described as the Buddhist goddess of mercy, in the yellow, and Guan Kong, or Guan Yu is called in Chinese, who's often described as a god of war, but also of justice, with kind of a red face. Below Buddha, you have Li Bai, called Li Tai Bak in Vietnamese, who was a famous Taoist poet who wrote nature poetry. And below him, Jesus Christ, with his bleeding heart. And then below him, an image of one of the ancestral figures. And what these represent are 5 levels of spiritual attainment: the veneration of ancestors, the worship of saints, including Christian saints, the veneration of immortals, and finally, becoming a god, becoming Buddha. So Cao Daism is an effort at synthesizing a large number of different world religions from the historical vantage point of Vietnam. Now, there are contrasting forms of spirit mediumship in these traditions. In Dao Mao, the worship of mother goddesses, you serve the spirits with a performance of physical agility, grace, and elegance, followed by the distribution of gifts. It's called Len Dong, which is literally stepping up onto the medium. In Cao Daism, you have literary spirit writing, they call it Gubud. It results in messages, usually in verse, regarded as new scriptures from spiritual leaders. So the techniques for getting these new scriptures involve often the use of something called the phoenix basket, which traces spirit messages on a table. Now, to most of you, this will look a little bit like a Ouija board, because a Ouija board also sometimes points, will trace letters, and what we call a Ouija board, which is more a children's plaything, was called a planchette in France in the early part of the 20th century. Here you see one of the spirit mediums holding it. This one has a dragon face on it. There's another one that has a phoenix. These are symbols of male and female. He's sitting underneath a painting of Confucius in Canton, one of the most important surviving spiritual centers of this occultist tradition here. This is a California spirit medium in Monterey Park, California, with the phoenix basket that he uses in seances. He was also able to receive a whole series of new messages. So just as there were what they called new volumes of the Bible received back in Vietnam in the 1920s and 1930s, there also have been new spirit messages received here in California to guide a diasporic population. Here you see the dragon-headed spirit basket, which is the larger one, the more important one. What the spirit basket does is gives you a way to communicate with spirits who can then help you to live, one hopes, a moral life, a good life, in a new context. Now, Vietnamese goddesses have even come to Sunset Boulevard in LA. This is the temple Den Chua Su Tang Mao of the Sacred Mother from the Sound Mountain in southern Vietnam, who has a rather, I'm just going to go back to that because you can see the American flag beside her, identifying this as a California temple. And this is inside the temple. This is the goddess herself called the Lady of the Realm. And she is worshipped by people who seek mainly prosperity, good fortune, harmony in their homes. They will promise to make an offering to her if she offers them that, and then they will bring her splendid feasts. You'll see people bringing a whole pig, other things, and placing this on her altar and devoting it to her because of the blessings that she can have. And when you're pulling back, you can see what you often see. Many Vietnamese religions are also about getting rich, and this is certainly no exception. You can see offerings here of flowers, of food, of rice cakes that are presented to this goddess in the hope that she will help them to be more prosperous. Now, both of these traditions share certain heroic figures, and this is probably the most important one. This is a figure called Tran Hồng Dao. He was a national hero who appears in both pantheons. He fought against the Mongols in the 12th century, and there are even today many streets named after him in Vietnam. There's a sculpture of him I've heard in Orange County. I actually haven't visited it, but my students have told me about it. And so when he appears in the Mother Goddess religion, it is usually women who are seek to be possessed by the spirit of Tran Hồng Dao because he makes them braver and able to sort of break the glass ceiling, speak directly, speak courageously, in some ways embody what we think of as masculine patterns of action. In Cao Daism, Tran Hồng Dao is also a spirit who will speak about the duty to defend your country. He's one of the few figures, in a sense, revered in both North and South Vietnam and representing in some ways the unity of the country. You'll also sometimes see unsuspected things on altars. This is a Mother Goddess altar in Garden Grove, California. It's an altar to the spirit of children, the spirit of the little boy who you saw incarnated earlier, dressed in the green. And here you have Santa Claus and a whole bunch of toys and candy. When I asked, why is Santa Claus on the altar, they said, Santa Claus is the American spirit of children. And I said, maybe I guess he is. Kids pray to him, they get gifts from him. Vietnamese people associate him with what they call the kitchen god. The kitchen god is also associated basically with chimneys. Yeah. And the kitchen god you pray to at the moment of the Lunar New Year, and you will get little red envelopes with cash. And the kitchen god makes a report to the higher deities. So basically, this is an act of syncretism, a bridging between different religions. These are, if you wish, innovative people living in Orange County saying, what is like the kitchen god that we have here in Orange County? They said, well, Santa Claus. And so Santa Claus is on the altar, and he also is important as a mediator between generations. It's one way in which children communicate with their elders. And the child spirit, who's an important spirit, as I mentioned in the Mother Goddess thing, is the one who is most associated with this spirit of Santa Claus. Other things that happen, which are part of the elaborate ritual trappings of spirit medium worship in California, as well as in Vietnam, is the creation of these sort of effigies, which are, to us, look a bit like piñatas. They're made basically of colored paper. They're elaborately constructed. And these are the servants of the sixth lady, the lady from the Highlands, who you saw incarnated earlier. The important thing about these beautiful, beautiful objects is that they're brought in front of the altar, that you pray with them with incense, you make offerings to them, and at the end of this beautiful ritual, they're burned. Because burning is a way to send messages up to the upper world. It is a way to stress the fact that this world is a temporary world and that it cannot continue indefinitely. And so the burning of the offerings is a form of communication. Now I also want to talk a little bit about gender and spirit mediumship in both of these traditions. Both of them have played around, one could say, with different cultural models of gender. In Dao Mao, the way of the Mother Goddess, you have predominantly female spirit mediums who worship in small-scale temples, and the recent emergence of a whole number of male masters, these taikun, who are often skilled in older ways of writing Vietnamese. Vietnamese used to be written in characters. Most people don't know that now. But if you want to communicate with your ancestors, you should be able to write characters. So it's important to have these literary skills. They will help people write se, which are sort of petitions to the upper world. And so if you want to go higher within the hierarchy of Tao, of Mother Goddess worship, you need to be in contact with some of these increasingly male masters. And many of them are now celebrities, media celebrities in Vietnam. Cao Daism went another way. Originally it had what they called 12 male zodiacal dignitaries, men born in each of 12 different years of the East Asian zodiac. And they made up what was called the College of Spirit Mediums in 1926. Now more and more women are become literary spirit mediums as the religion enters its sort of yin phase. When the religion was new and expanding in the 1920s and 30s, it got a couple of million followers in the first few decades of its existence. That was what they called the yang phase, the male phase, the assertive phase. After the fall of Saigon in 1975, Cao Daism was considered politically incorrect. It was basically closed down for a quarter century. The temples were not destroyed, but they were boarded up. Only after what Vicky Do was just talking about, this period of renovation, were the temples allowed to reopen, to be restored, and now once again Cao Daism is welcoming new people into its temples and restoring them. This is a view of the great temple in Tay Ninh, which is notable for having a mixture of different architectural styles. The dragons wrapped around the pillars with the lotus flowers on them represent the Day of Reckoning. The Dragon Lotus Flower Day, which is a day when those who have earned spiritual merit will be able to become almost gods themselves. Those who have not earned spiritual merit will suffer the consequences. And so this interior of the Great Temple shows, you can see the left eye of God on the windows over there, and then you see a kind of arabesque stair going up to a pulpit, and the very colorful interior of it. The religion itself was founded by 3 founding spirit mediums who make up what they call the Heptiandai, or the College of Spirit Mediums. The one in the center is called the Hofap, the defender of the Dharma, and he's dressed in basically the costume of a general from ancient imperial times. On either side are his assistants. One of them has the whisk, which is used for purification in Taoism. The other is holding a fan. And so these represent the Taoist and Buddhist heritages that are brought together in combination with a sort of Confucian idea of respect for family, respect for tradition, respect for parents. In the United States, however, religious leadership was taken on by women. And this is Baxio Hua, a woman spirit medium who led the first Cao Dai temple in California, which is Tenli Wu Toa in San Jose, California. And she innovated by wearing the colors that were normally worn only by men in Vietnam. And she also developed a whole series of rituals to protect us from earthquakes. We could use them now with global change. Unfortunately, the spirit medium has now passed on, so we can't depend on her anymore. But she was very important. Temples to the mother goddess, who is called Ziu Kim Mao, the goddess of the Jasper Pond, are also very important in California. Figures of mother goddesses are used to bring people together across different social classes, across barriers, because the mother is seen as loving and accepting of everyone. Male figures tend to be seen as more hierarchical, more divisive in certain ways. And the offerings that are made, the paper offerings that are made to mother goddesses are like this one, the beautiful, colorful ladies in waiting. For many of the male deities, they can be things like elephants, boats, houses. They represent the structures of power, the institutions of the family in Vietnamese traditional life, particularly in the imperial period. One huge difference between these two religions is that Cao Daism, which emerged in the 1920s in the French colonial period, has elements of French spiritism, of theosophy. It includes figures like Victor Hugo and Joan of Arc, who were French spiritists, at least in that interpretation. And so it's very much, in many ways, about the crisis of colonialism and Vietnam stepping into its role as a new nation. Dao Mao is completely the opposite. There's no mention of French colonial control. There's no mention of the Communist Party victory. They go all the way back to imperial times. This is a time, in a sense, where, although it had its share of conflicts, it was before the conflicts of the modern day, and there's a sense of getting power from these images of the past. So there's a very different orientation towards history. Cao Daism is very much a 20th century faith, and Dao Mao is the revival of a much older one. Now this is the Cao Dai Temple in California, which was constructed on Orangewood Avenue, also in Garden Grove. Actually, you can visit several religions along Orangewood Avenue in Garden Grove. And you can see, it's sort of pretty small, but you can see the flag of the Republic of Saigon, the red and the yellow and red striped flag on the side, the flag of the United States on the other side. This temple is, however, not officially affiliated with organizations in Vietnam because of the history of divisions and troubles that have followed, and because there's been reluctance to officially affiliate with a religion in Vietnam that is now, it's now legal, it's nevertheless under a lot of surveillance, there are a lot of limitations in terms of what they can do, they're not allowed to practice the spiritist, they're not allowed to legally practice the spiritist seances which are once produced their scriptures. The truth is it's an open secret that some of these things are practiced privately, secretly, in people's homes, but they aren't allowed to practice them in a public space. So there's a sense that government control over Cao Dai institutions has meant that the Cao Dai temples in California are not interested in affiliating with the with the official organization run in Vietnam. Although this is what they call their Vatican in Vietnam. It has what I call sort of a European front. You can see the two towers there that look sort of like something like Notre Dame in Paris. But then on the side, you have something that is common in Buddhist temples, which is 9 different ascending levels. And at the very highest level at the back is where you have the most sacred area. So both of these religions have come to California, have had to adjust to new situations, to new contexts. They have had to reinvent themselves in certain ways, but they've also proved to be a source of solace, of comfort, and of ritual transformations for people here. And I think now we're going to hear from Viet, who's going to talk more about ritual transformations.
So today, I'm going to do some karaoke with you, or as I call it, karaoke. And hopefully you can hear me okay. Yeah? It's called Fiction, Faction, Affliction. I'm happy to be here with you. This is the beginning. There is no end. I'm happy to be here with you. This is the beginning. We're together. Now is the start. There's no end. I'm happy we're together.
Now to an important move by one of the nation's oldest magazines. National Geographic is reckoning with editorial decisions of its past at a time when other major media outlets are taking a critical look at their legacies.
Fact. Sorry, not sorry. Fact. Fact.
Killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly with his song.
Fact. We saw the U.S. government kill isolated villagers. Fact or fiction? Fact. Vietnam, as my country was called. Annam, as my country was called. Annam State. Vietnam State. Sodomite. Dynamite. Fact. Fact and fiction, I co-curated a show with scholar and artist Young Min 15 years ago, before K-pop got huge. Here we are, we're in Korea. It was a huge project. So here are some installations. We went to Vietnam. We went to UC Irvine, where I used to teach. And before it got huge, there were already fans in Mexico, all over the world. Here's one of them today.
As of now, you are sitting next to me, and it's all that I'm seeing now.
And now I'm a writer with no purpose to write. Didn't want this to end. There's no one inside. Something here, something here, something here, something here, something here. As I continue on, as I write on this page so clear, almost gone. I know that the story can never have an end. It's neither happy nor sad, only fiction.
Between fact and fiction, you don't know. Yeah, so we went to the Urban Nomad Film Festival Arts in San Francisco. As part of our research, we realized that K-pop and the South Korean economy is bathed in blood money. South Korea was paid billions of dollars to kill Vietnamese, killing me softly with his song, soldiers. And they're especially brutal because of Japanese colonialism that they learned, and they sliced off ears, but they reinvested that money over decades into the South Korean economy and strategically into K-pop and K-beauty. We got a lot of press. Facts from the show, I started making some music videos. Nudity alert.
quen tất cả, quen mặt trời, quen cả tuổi mình. And this
yesterday was this solar eclipse, so this is actually called Eclipse. If you watch a video, I probably know where it's
từng đôi chim tung cánh dịu hít cao cành đào em nắng chân hoa chỉ càng lo nhớ chỉ ngân sao ôi con ngây ngất dịu nhau theo dòng suối nơi trên đèo còn thấy chim em lời ơi chim ơi.
His name is Bakran, and he runs a cafe karaoke bar in Hanoi. And I can talk about all the music later. And he was in prison for his pop songs. That's the work in progress. 2, affliction. Fact, fiction. Fact, fiction, affliction. What is fact? What is fiction? Fact. I'm unable to recall what happened to Ma when I was even there for her breakdown. What she looked like, how long she was in the hospital, or his name, or how long she eventually returned to the same Asian Pacific psychiatric hospital from long ago. The fact is that I refuse to remember. I do not call my brother to ask for his help in sharpening my memory ability and my probes the better to saw against bone. I reject memory and accept my amnesia because that's the Asian Pacific Psychiatric Hospital is the most terrifying place I've ever been. And my mother's 72-hour detention in the hospital is the most unsettling time for me. I will trade parts of my body, shorten my life, rather than be afflicted like patients of that ward, like the people undergoing that detention, like Ma. Fact. So this is Nguyen, the author, who wrote that piece. And several months later, actually, my mom would end up in an Asian psychiatric hospital with schizophrenia. Fact. What is fact? What is fiction? What is affliction? So she became okay. Fact. 4 years ago, my sister would also end up in a psychiatric hospital in a hospital at the beginning of COVID when people were dying. So when I watch this video, I just think of her.
넌 목적을 잃어버린 작가 소설의 끝은 어떻게 마무리 져야 해 사랑해 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 이세 그 잠에서 내려가 무뎌진 배 눈물로 얼룩진 나의 그 종류 위로 행복할 수도 슬플 수도 없어 이야기는 지금 난 너무나도 행복한 생각에 이야기를 쓰지만 모든 게 바람일 뿐이라고 여전히.
And I asked his illness and initiation because I too was in a psychiatric hospital when I was 13. I dropped out of middle school, I dropped out of high school, I dropped out of college. Somehow I was overachieving, became a Western Hoskins student with a PhD. So there's a term called Korean shaman sickness. And if you need called Kan, you can watch Western Hoskins video on YouTube, Left Eye of God. But allegedly one of my grandfathers was a co-founder, and they see mediums and have visions. But I was really ill my whole life, these most debilitating illnesses which I have. But I started making work towards a healing, which I'm just sharing with you briefly. And I started asking other healers, other scholars from Global South religions, artists. This is the laid out religion. Mother Goddess. And of course they transfigure, and I made a show around this after this research.
I wrote a song for you and all the things you do.
up in San Francisco until the...
Come join the party, let's get this started,
So we just had some related programming that was that video, and also screened Nguyen Thai Tuan's film, which was screened also last year at Film Fest. Shout out to Isa, you can watch it online until the end of today. And I'm wrapping up. What is fact? What is fiction? What is affliction? Facts. I'm happy we're together. Now is the end. Now is the start. Now is the end. Now is the start. Now is the end. What is fact? What is fiction? Now is the start. Together. Now is the start. There is no end. Saranghae, saranghae, saranghae.